Assalamualaikum, we're live now.
All right. You want me to get started? Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuhu. We're gathered here tonight as brothers and sisters and servants of Allah to understand the processes of building peace and opportunity for all the citizens in this country and really impactful in the world. This is a situation that impacts people even of non-African American descent. We are brothers and sisters, and we know that Allah Ta'ala, who is our leader, our set of our lives, was the friend of the oppressed. Before we get started, we'd like to have Sheikh Ali Sulieman Ali give us a dua. Sheikh.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلالك وعظيم سلطانك نثني عليك ولا نحصي الثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك اللهم بارك لنا في هذا اللقاء اللهم بارك لنا في هذا اللقاء ووفقنا لكل ما تحبه وترضاه وألهمنا الصواب برحمتك يا أكرم الأكرمين ويا أرحم الراحمين صلى الله وسلم على سيدنا نبينا محمد صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين.
So we would like to get started with our program. We have individuals, Muslim brothers and Muslimas, who are committed to the ending of oppression. The Sunnah of the Prophet has said one of the worst things that you can live under is oppression, and one of the worst individuals you can be is an oppressor. So this is an opportunity, a discussion, and an opportunity for us to heal from the processes of oppression and understand how we can free people from this disease, this misunderstanding, this injustice, to be able to be healed. The solution for which and the goal for which is to give us all a better atmosphere in which to live and serve our Lord. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, we have a series of guests. And so we have decided, because we have worked very diligently, but in a short matter of time, to allow our presenters to introduce themselves and give us 5 to 10 minutes of what they feel about this situation of structural injustice and oppression that is being dealt with in our country. And since I've lived in this country my entire life, the beautiful observation I have made, with the permission of Allah, that many of our citizens are prepared to let go of this harm, to be healed from this harm. But in order to be healed, one must understand the foundations of the heart. And in disease, you have to understand what caused the disease and then what can prevent it and what can cure it. So as we move to our next presenter, Sheikh Sulieman Ali Sulieman, a great leader in our world, in the Islamic world, in our community, we would like Sheikh to address some of the issues he feels in his heart that underlie this situation that we all must work toward healing for, and give us some ideas from the life of the Prophet ﷺ, from Islam, which addresses everything, and how we can move from this fitna into a better relationship with Allah, because you cannot have a good relationship with your Lord when you participate in oppression, and particularly when you are an oppressor. Sheikh Ali.
So Sarah, how many minutes I have?
10. Yes.
Hello?
Yes.
How many minutes do I have?
7 to 10 minutes.
10 minutes. Whoa.
Yeah.
طيب, inshallah, bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, alhamdulillah. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, for making us Muslims and sending to us a prophet called Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam as universal mercy for mankind. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala taught us in his book, in the Quran, that all you, mankind, you created from single male and female, Adam and Hawa. Whether you are black, you are white, you are color, you are yellow, you are brown, And also he told us, all of you are my servant. I created you for worship me only. And then he sent a book to us. And this book, he made it, Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam explained to us this book. One of the most hateful things to Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is injustice. One of the most hateful things to Allah, to the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is racism. The racism, all of you know that the racism starts with the shaitan. He is the father of racism when he says, أنا خير منه. I'm better than Adam. Why? لأن خلقتني من نار وخلقته من طين. You created me from the fire. You created him from dust. The same concept. I'm white, you are black. I'm black, you are white. You are color, you are this and this and that and that. My brothers and sisters in Islam, wallahi, Islam is not exaggeration when we said Islam had a solution for humanity. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who created this world, is the one who brought us to this world, and he gave us Sharia, guidelines, how to live in this world, how to live in this world. And one of the things that he made it very clear to us as a sacred is a human life. One of the things he said, I forbid on myself and I made it haram among yourself is dhulm. Ya ibadi, inni haramtu dhulma ala nafsi wa ja'altu bainakum muharraman fala tadhalamu. O my servant, I forbid injustice and myself, and I made it haram among yourself, and do not oppress one another. Brothers and sisters in Islam, 10 minutes is a very short for me in order to sum up what I would like to say. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, by the virtue of the wahi and the virtue of his character that Allah created him with, he was able almost to eradicate injustice among Muslims and racism among the Muslims. He was able to do that. He was able to do that. I want to say very few things because due to the time. It is not, Prophet ﷺ called racism, tribalism as a da'wah al-jahiliyyah, the practice of jahiliyyah. And he said, da'uha fa'innaha muntina. Leave it alone because it smells bad. Because this racism and leads to injustice. At the time that you feel that you are better than someone, you look down upon him and you would like to subject him and so on. In this part of the world, it is unfortunate, and that the people and those racists, not all white are racist, no. Not all blacks are racist, not all brown people are racist. Yes, the racist one, my brothers and sisters in Islam, they respect an animal than even human beings. In Michigan here, one of the da'i was shot 20 times, and the dog was shot one time at the same time, because when they sent the dog to him to bite him, he shot the dog, and they shot him 20 times. Then they brought a helicopter and took the dog to a hospital and leave human beings dying, bleeding to death. This is because of racism. My brothers and sisters in Islam, racism is it's a disease that is not easy to take out from the hearts of the people. And intelligent people who know their God, who recognize Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they submit to Islam. Yes, they will have some prejudice, but we can live. We can live without doing injustice or inflicting injustice to those that we look down upon them. It is not coincidence, my brothers and sisters in Islam, when the Prophet ﷺ made Bilal as his mu'adhin, a black man. I assume that Abu Musa al-Ash'ari has a better voice than Bilal. Prophet ﷺ can make him as is his muadhin, but he made Bilal for reason. It is not coincidence that the Prophet ﷺ, he made wasiyah among those who will put him in his grave. There are 2 or 3 slaves, Osama and Shakran. They were there. They were their slaves. They are black. They were there. My brothers and sisters in Islam, and Islam, the solution is in Islam. There's no question about it. This is not exaggeration. It's true. Because you see, injustice is one of the most abhorrent things to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah imposed upon us to be just, even if it's against ourselves, against our father, against ourselves, against everybody. It's very, very clear in the Quran. Quran imposed upon Muslims to be justice to even their enemies, to the enemies who really, really hate them, to be justice with them. And Prophet ﷺ made it very clear: whoever kills non-Muslim who lives in our state, I will kill him. Okay. So my brothers and sisters in Islam, I'm trying to sum up here and here in a short time about the racism. As far as racism is still there, is being practiced, and there will be injustice in all aspects of life: politically, economically, educationally, socially, in all aspects. In all aspects. Okay, so we are Muslims. We have to stand for justice. We should not allow this thing to continue going and remaining spectators. Spectators looking what is going on. Yes, we have to follow the system which has been established in the country that we are living in, protesting against injustice. We have to form a force because this country, they believe in organization. Alhamdulillah, ICNA has a committee which concern about human rights. We have to have unified. You have to have a unified body of Muslims in this country that will stand and will be part of the national human rights, and the black African Americans will be part of them in fighting against injustice, and that is inflicted on them or others. It's not only African Americans, but in the others also are being discriminated against because of their color, because of their tongue, because of they are not white, and so on. So my brothers and sisters in Islam, this is what I would like to say in these very few minutes, and I hope I didn't take more time than I was given. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam, Sheikh. Whatever word you give is a benefit and a blessing to us. The understanding is so vast. We know that we cannot accomplish but so much in a decade, because this is a haram, as you said, that has extended from the time of the Shaitan. And so any knowledge that we receive from our presenters will be a blessing from Allah. This is why we wanted you to speak from your heart. And we appreciate the work that you've done in the community to eradicate all injustice so that all of us could live in peace. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. The next presenter is going to be Sister Malika MacDonald. Sister, can you take the mic and give us an idea of your background, please?
Assalamu alaikum. It's actually an honor to be on this panel, and I appreciate being invited to speak. With that said, I was a bit nervous coming on to the panel today. However, I think it's a wonderful opportunity for myself to learn, and to learn from my esteemed colleagues that will be joining us. I am Sister Malika MacDonald. I am the director of ICNA Relief's Transitional Housing Network. I am joining from Boston, Massachusetts, which is notorious for some of the movements in the racial justice movement throughout time. But alhamdulillah, I believe that I am coming here today to learn how to be a better ally, how to support my African brothers and sisters and people of color. You know, as a white woman, I struggled with what would I contribute today. And what I feel that I can bring is my openness and willingness to support, but to learn. I've been involved in many of the recent protests, and then also through experience of raising my own children who are biracial, have witnessed great injustices, you know, brought upon the African American community. And within the Muslim community, it's, you know, unfortunate that racism is extremely alive and well. Within the Muslim community, we are not immune to racism. But as the Sheikh has said, Islam is the answer, which it truly is. Islam is the answer if it was only practiced and followed. And unfortunately, it's not. You know, as Muslims, we're human and we have a lot of biases. Myself, I discover, you know, unconscious biases all the time. I'm fortunate to have some friends who have pointed those out to me at time. And instead of taking an offense, I need to listen. And I think that's what many people who are Caucasian, such as myself, or Arab or South Asian, we need to step back. You know, we hear a lot, all lives matter, all lives matter. No, they don't at this time. We need to support and understand why the term or the phrase Black Lives Matters came about and why it is important for us to support that, because until Black Lives Matters, all lives will not matter and don't currently. And we've seen that demonstrated time and time again with recent events. So I think, you know, what I am really looking for is for those that are in the community who are uncomfortable. It's a good thing. It's good that you're uncomfortable at this time. That's showing you that you may have some biases yourself. That's showing that you may misunderstand or lack knowledge. And it's time for us to take a back seat and to listen with an open heart to what our African American brothers and sisters, whether they are Muslim or not, are telling us. And then we need to support them and let them lead this movement. And that's why I was so uncomfortable of being on this panel today was, you know, what right do I have? Who am I to be here on this panel? But I'm really calling upon others who look like me to open your heart, to sit back, to listen, and to see how can you support. And if you don't know, ask. You know, I think there are many in our community who would really appreciate if you had a conversation with them, if you sat down, if you listened and learned about the history of the African American or the civil rights movement here in America. For many of my immigrant brothers and sisters, if it was not for that movement, you would not have been able to immigrate here to the United States. It was through that movement that made it possible for you to get your immigration status to come here. You know, and I think we owe a lot to our African American brothers and sisters, especially the Muslim community. And it's saddening. It's saddening sometimes when I see that their struggle, their contributions to our communities are often sidelined or overlooked or suppressed or oppressed for that matter. And that often happens in our community. You know, as a white woman, I'm sorry, as a white woman, oftentimes, you know, I come across people who feel that they can just say anything to me, you know, that they feel that they're, you know, free. They don't have to put, you know, filter on what they say. And it's unfortunate, you know, and when that happens, we need to be able to stand up and call out racism wherever we see it, even within our own families. I actually years ago, I was working in a position, and my supervisor at the time was a Muslim man from the continent of Africa. And at the time, I had recently gotten married, and he had said to me, "But you're a good looking white woman. Why would you marry a black man?" And I was like, because he's a good looking black man? But he went on to say, this man who came from the continent of Africa went on to say, well, even if a brother approached me for my daughter's hand in marriage, even if he was a Hafiz of Quran or an engineer or a doctor, if he was black, I would not let my daughter marry him. This is how real and alive racism is within our communities. And at that time, I had to explain to him how it was, how inappropriate, first and foremost, his comments were. But when I tried to explain to him, but you come from Africa, but he did not identify as African. He was Arab. And it's sad that we can't get past these tribal, labels that we carry and see that we are all one human race. And I think within the Muslim community, it's wonderful to hear the teachings of Islam and with the Sheikh explaining how there's no room for racism or injustice. But oftentimes when it comes to the Muslim community, when we speak of justice, they think it's just us. And they only get involved when it's issues of just us. And that's unfortunate. But I do see in recent events, in recent protests, some change. I see that our younger generations are getting more involved and they're joining hands because they get it. But it's people such as myself, a grandmother of 11, and others like me, that we need to see what our role is and don't impose ourselves onto the movement, the revolution, if you will, and learn our role in the struggle, learn our role of how we best can support and defend African Americans, especially now. And then we need to go back and look at our own baggage, at our own views, in our own homes, in our Islamic centers. What can we do there to change that? Alhamdulillah, the community that I am most involved with, the Islamic Center, is in a large community of color. Can we do better? Most definitely. Most definitely we can do better. Of really involving everyone in leadership positions, changing boards, that our communities, our Islamic centers, our organizations, leadership reflects the communities in which we serve. And then just, okay. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Tahira. I'm not able to hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Go on and finish, sis. We're listening to what you have.
Well, I mean, it's just, these are issues that, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and it's unfortunate that we've reached 2020 and not much has changed. My children who are biracial, my older children are much darker than I am, and when people see me with them, they don't even think that they're my children. They think, oh, who's Sister Malika? Who are these men that Sister Malika is with? But I remember when my son, must have been about third grade, came home. Now, he was born in 83. And it must have been about third grade that he came home to me and he said, Mommy, what's a nigga? And I was so thrown back and deeply hurt that his innocence at that time had been destroyed. I did my best to explain. I did my best to talk to him, but I knew that I was ill-equipped. And it led me on a journey. It led me on a journey to seek knowledge, to understand, and to know better. And alhamdulillah, that journey actually is what led me to Islam. In 1995, as a result of the Million Man March, I brought my children to the send-off because I wanted them to see this historical moment of 1 million Black men going to march on Washington. So I took my children to the send-off, and that's what actually led me to go to an Islamic center the day of the march with my children, to learn more about Islam. But also I was seeking a place where we could all belong, this white mother with her Black children, because that was something that I didn't find at the time in any church. What the teachings and what led me to become Muslim were beautiful. What I found was very different. And what my children have subsequently found going to the masjid has been very different. But we just really need to hold tight to the teachings, the true and proper teachings of Islam.
You, sister. Beautiful, powerful voice that we need. We need all of the voices. We need the understanding. Um, the reality is that there are some things that you will be able to say that will have more credibility because you are of European descent than if I can say. The situation is so very difficult now. They're trying to write slavery out of the history books. They're trying to clean it up. They're trying to constantly rework it rather than get rid of it so it doesn't look so bad. No one wants to take ownership of what we've been forced to live through. So I think it's very powerful. You're a very important force in this war. As a European American of ethnicity, but you're Muslim in your heart. Allah says he looks at the heart. And unfortunately, what the people who practice this illness don't understand, they will not be completely free until their heart is free of this poison. And the beautiful part about it, the children now know this is not a way to live because the children now hearts are open and they're out there on the battlefield. I think what's important that we each go back into our own communities. We've all been poisoned. There is a Spanish philosopher, Paulo Freire, says that when you've been oppressed, you need to find out where the oppressor lies within yourself. And many of our immigrant community is here because they were being oppressed. So do we want to bring that oppression with us that they have experienced and reimpose it? And so many times, as you said, it's unconscious. So are the microaggressions that you suffered with your children that people are literally programmed. I sat on a powerful panel with one of the professors out of Zaytuna, Dr. Bassam, and he said, you have to realize that even though you weren't born in America, you were part of the colonial programming that all of us have been. We've all been programmed. And much of the programming is good. So we have to accept that. Where does the oppressor live within us? What part of our hearts are aligned with Allah? And there's no way our hearts can be properly aligned when you have this kind of illness within it. We know that with social media, most of the social imaging of people of color is negative. When you looked at the news this past week, I did not know that there are that many professors of law. I know them personally, but you don't see them on television. We just had 9 Black males accepted in Harvard Law School. You're not going to see that. One of my grandchildren just graduated from the high school in Detroit, a major one of her student friends received $1 million, African American males, in scholarship. You're not going to see that little boy on the news unless he is accused of robbing a bank. So how do we get processed to feel the way we do? And for the gentleman who said that he would not allow his daughter to marry an African American, well, you're in a country that my grandmother got beaten and whipped to build. You need to understand that. And she will marry who she wants to, and you will have to understand the price you will pay to carry that pain in your heart, because Allah once again looks at the heart. It's a huge conversation, and we appreciate people with the courage like Sister Malika to come up and speak up. Much of the wrong is done in silence. I heard a European American lady say the other day, I wasn't taught to hate Black people, but I was taught to be silenced in face of the wrong that was being done to them. So part of our greater work is to raise our voices in opposition to the wrong, whatever way we see the wrong being implemented, because we will be held accountable on Yom Kippur for all of this. And we know it's a human condition, but it's a human condition that we can heal. We want to give opportunity to our other beautiful speakers on the panel. And I would ask Imam Khalid Griggs if he would please come and share with his feelings on this subject and information that we could have to help heal us from this illness. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. First off, I would like to thank ICNA Relief for holding a very timely webinar on a subject that is dominating not only the news cycle, but dominating the thoughts and ideas and the sentiments of people all across the country today. And I want to acknowledge that this particular day has been a holiday, a state holiday in 47 states at this point. And today, there's legislation in the Senate that was put forward by at least 2 of our African-American senators to make Juneteenth a national holiday. And let me just speak very quickly about Juneteenth. Juneteenth is the occasion on June the 19th, 1865, when Gordon Granger, a Union Army officer, actually went to Galveston, Texas to read part of the Emancipation Proclamation that was actually written 2.5 years before Granger informed the enslaved people in Texas that that slavery, the ownership of one man by another man, that the slavery was over. So, but 2.5 years later, the enslaved people in Texas had not gotten that message, and they were still working as enslaved people on plantations across the state of Texas. And I point out this incident not just because today is that celebration known as Juneteenth, but it also is indicative of the internal contradictions of which this nation has been built upon. Oftentimes, many of my brothers and sisters in well-intentioned and well-meaning will make comments about the system that we're living under, the social system that we're living under in this country. And they will make the comment that the system is broken and we need to fix it. No, the system is not broken. This system is working according to design. It was formulated under a white supremacist ideology. We can read the US Constitution. There's so many incidents within the Constitution, written into the Constitution, that will verify this statement. At the time of the writing of the Constitution, that for the purpose of voting, African people on plantations, enslaved Africans, were counted in the South as 3/5 of a human being for the purpose of these plantation owners being able to increase their census numbers and thereby have more congressmen and more influence in the halls of Congress in the United States. And so the system is working according to plan. It is working according to how it was designed to work. And that system was based on anti-Black racism. One of the things that our brothers and sisters, particularly in the immigrant or the new American-born Muslim community here, one of the things that has to be understood is that racism in the United States is not a generically applied to every non-white person in this country. The reason why we are seeing the outpouring of support and anger and disgust with the way that people of African descent have been treated in this country is because racism in this country has been very specific, meaning that there are other non-white groups of people who have suffered injustices under the system of racism in this country, but this racism in the United States was built and founded on anti-Black racism. That there's been a special brand of oppression, of vuln, of denial of human rights, specially crafted and implemented throughout the centuries in this country. This is a very young nation. If we talk about the founding of the government, it's only 242 years old. It's a very young nation. But within that young period of time as a nation, this country has put together one of the most racist, one of the most anti-human and human rights denying nations in the history of this country. Let me just give one quick example and I'll come to the present. The person who's recognized as probably being the most racist person of the 20th century is the madman from Germany, Adolf Hitler. I think it informs us about racism in this country to know that Adolf Hitler in the 1930s looked at how Black people were treated in this country, and he applauded the government of the United States and how this government was crafting citizenship around race. It was a racial citizenship and hierarchy that had been achieved in the United States, and the super racist Adolf Hitler. And you can read some of his writings in his book, Mein Kampf, and other books and information about him. But he was inspired by the system of racism in this country. And so this is not happenstance that we find George Floyd, Arbery, that we find this person after person in today's environment being shot and killed by killer cops, by racist cops who are having complete immunity from prosecution. If we look at the statistics, what we'll find is that it's been less than a handful of police officers who have actually murdered unarmed Black men and women, either on the streets, in their cars, or in their homes. It's less than a handful of these tens and tens of supposed law enforcement officers who have been convicted of any crime whatsoever. As a matter of fact, because there's no national database, and I'm just talking specifically about the police departments across the country, but because there's no national database tracking these racist officers, you can kill someone in one as a member of one police department and then just go to another police department in another city, in another town, and you still have a gun and a badge, and you're still in a position to carry out extrajudicial killings on the streets and brutalizing particularly Black men on the streets of America today. And so as Muslims, we cannot, Sister Malika put it so beautifully, we cannot be satisfied that our religion, that Islam, that we have a perfect system, that as Al-Hajj Malik al-Shabazz has said, after returning from Hajj, making the pilgrimage in April of 1964, and returning to this country, after having been the national spokesperson for the Nation of Islam, at that time was espousing a philosophy that all white people were devils and that all Black people were gods. This is what Malcolm was teaching and espousing across this nation for 12 years. But after coming into, and I'm not trying to suggest that Malcolm first found about the true religion of Islam after making the pilgrimage, because there were many Sudanese and others, African Americans, who at every opportunity when Malcolm was in the nation were trying to let him know that this is not the true religion of Islam. But after Malcolm came back from the pilgrimage, one of the things that he has famously said, and that many Muslims quote, is that America needs to understand Islam because it's that one way of life. It's the one religion that can cure this country from the disease of cancer. And it is truly a disease. But you and I as Muslims, those of you who are watching this who are Muslim, we cannot take comfort in the fact when we see the kinds of injustice and the implementation of racism that's going on in the streets of America, in the homes in America today, we should not take comfort that our faith is perfect. And our faith given to us by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has devised a roadmap for us to rid ourselves of this disease of racism, if in fact we have not become anti-racist ourselves. You see, it's not enough for us as Muslims to just say that I'm not a racist. I have Black friends who come to my house, and so surely I'm not a racist. I can't be a racist. Even if you don't harbor those racist attitudes that have been perpetuated in this country now for so many centuries, that's not enough. What is demanded of Muslims from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is for us to be anti-racist, following the sunnah, the example of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We as Muslims are divinely mandated to be anti-racist and social justice citizens. It's a part of our faith. It's an inseparable part of the religion of Islam. And so if I take comfort in the fact that I'm not telling Black jokes, around non-Black people, that I'm not laughing at these jokes when non-Black people deride people of African descent, that's not enough for us as Muslims. An anti-racist is one who takes a stand and a position to eliminate those individual instances and examples of racism, but also to work to dismantle the system of systemic structural racism that has governed relationships, that has so denied people of African descent primarily and others of equal opportunity and equal access to the spoils of living here in America. Let me just point out just one other thing quickly. As American citizens, if we do not take a stand, a principled stand, to try to see what can I do to be a part of dismantling this structural systemic racism in this country, then you and I believe this in my heart, that you and I, when we're raised to give an account for our deeds on Yom Kiyama, on the day of judgment, when we stand before our Lord, we will be questioned about you had influence in America during this era. You had money. You had mental brilliance. You had organizational skills. You had charisma. You had the ability to influence others. You had the ability to try to help change and mold the society. Now, what did you do in the face of all of this examples of systemic and structural anti-Black racism? What did you do? And so I'm calling first upon myself. I want to and strive every day as a Muslim, as an Imam of a mosque in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, the community mosque of Winston-Salem, as a person, as a man who has spent his entire adult life organizing and fighting against these manifestations of systemic and structural racism in this country. As a father, as a husband, as a grandfather, as a man, it is my responsibility to use every fiber in my body to be one who's taking a stand against the systematic oppression of people in this country. So this day, Juneteenth, is off June 19th. Juneteenth was recognized first as a holiday with Black people in Texas. And it was called by various names in the early days. It was Jubilee Day. It was Emancipation Day. It was Liberation Day. The very fact that people who had been enslaved and dehumanized for so long were getting the word that the President of the United States was saying that you no longer have to suffer under this institution of chattel slavery that had been endorsed so many times by the Supreme Court of this country, by so many states and by so many federal officials, by so many elected officials across this land, that now you are no longer a chattel slave. You're no longer the property of someone else. So now is the time in this country that I believe that Muslims, with the guidance of Islam that we have, now is the time in this momentous occasion that I haven't seen in my entire life, that people of all races, ethnicities, people of all religions, socioeconomic backgrounds are coming together in the streets of America to express their outrage, to express their demand for changes. And I believe that the Muslim community, those Muslims who have, as Sister Malika talked about, the racism within us, those who have purged this cancer of racism out of our systems, out of our own personal systems, I believe that we are best qualified to carry this nation into a new era, to be the forerunners of ushering in a new era in America that's based on those good sounding ideals that have never been fully put into practice. It is our duty as Muslims to not just be involved in a protest, because we have to understand that with all of the good appearances of change that we're seeing, and some things are already changing in certain locales in this country, this could very well, after a period of time, just become another moment amongst people who are desiring change in this nation. And what I am pleading with myself and for others, to be marathon runners. Let's not let this opportunity to change America be just a moment. It can become a movement. We have to transform this moment in history to a continuous, ongoing movement that will tear down the walls of systemic and structural racism in this country. That this movement will come together and demolish those false notions about the superiority of one group of people over another group of people, that those of us who are Muslim will understand that our children and our grandchildren should not have to wait until they are grown to learn the history, the true history of this country and this nation, and those people who fought against and sacrificed their lives for systemic change in this country. It's our responsibility as parents, as grandparents, as uncles, as aunts, as grandmothers and mothers, as Muslims, it's our responsibility to teach this history. First, learn it ourselves, teach it to our children. There should never be a Muslim school anywhere in the United States in their curriculum that does not include the history of this country, the history of the struggle against anti-Black racism. And as we write history today, the history of the role that Muslims played in the transformation of a nation that looked like it would never change. But they should know, as we are writing on the pages of history now, that your Abu, that your Umi, that your aunt, your uncle, your grandmother, your grandfather played a significant role and part in transforming this nation, not just in a superficial or in a moment of time, but the movement that we were a part of helped to bring about substantive, long-lasting, systemic change in this country of the United States of America. Now, if you don't stop me now, I can give me the signal. I can keep going on for another 30 minutes. So we can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Thank you.
You've been so inspiring, brother. Amazing. And so much of what you said is true. For people to come to this country and not understand the history, most African Americans came to this country as Muslims. Islam was beaten out of us. We were, if you want to look at the writings of Dr. Sylvian Diop, she chronicles, and many, looking now at the records, she's a scholar, Francophone scholar, who looks at our history. We were here way before Columbus was here. So let us review our history. Let us review the history of the fact that there were beautiful people that were here who received the colonialists. I don't want to necessarily put a culture on them, but a mindset, allowed them to come here, welcome them, and they were destroyed. I taught a class recently at Wayne State. I did not know how many Native American people have been assassinated in this country. There are only 5% of that beautiful nation that now lives. I knew the Native Americans had suffered many, many wrongs and injustice, and they had died, but I did not know that only 5% of that culture exists. So if we want to be proud about our race, let us look at the fact that Thomas Jefferson, one of the premier presidents that everyone quotes, kept a chattel slave as a mistress in his basement. They just found her home. He had 6 children by her. He allowed, 3 of them ran away, 2 of them he allowed to be free. After he died, he never allowed her to be free. This is what, and he was writing the Constitution that said every man is created equal. We are in a country, we don't know the foundations of that country. And let us understand, as the brother and Malika, all the scholars have put so beautifully, it is a lack of understanding about our history and the history of this nation. There's no such thing as race. Race is a social construct that people use. And in this country, they have made the construct of race a justification. African Americans were put in a system of chattel slavery. That means you weren't even a human being. Where in the Constitution is 3/5 of a human being. So they could do you any way. They could treat you any way. Chattel slavery, an animal. Dr. Sylvian Diop says she's looking at, they write everything. And some of the narratives, slave narratives, they wouldn't even allow the African baby to have a stick as a toy. Someone needs to study that mindset. And I'm in academia, they have more books on everything. Study yourself. An issue around white supremacy, that solution will have to come out the European nation. They thought of it, they profited from it, and they're the ones that teach it and live it. And many of them live in silence. In front of you and I, oh, they're just the sweetest people in the world. But this is a system that has benefited that group of people extensively. But you know, you have to believe in Allah. Allah is most just. This will only last a while. And as more we read the Quran, we understand these trials and tribulations will come. But like the Imam just said, we are going to be held responsible for what we do, what we are doing or have done to face this injustice. You imagine that we're sitting here now and there are babies at the border, at the Mexican border, that are in cages. What happened to them during COVID? That the president of the United States refused to allow them to get flu shots, that a lot of those babies have disappeared, and you don't even hear about what happened to these babies and the matching with their parents anymore. That for a couple of weeks, they talked about trying to reunite these children, but see, that's what happened to us. We were sold on the slave block like animals. Well, they were writing a constitution that said all people are created equal. And when we ask equal, and we ask, and I know in the immigrant community, this is a question, well, what did you all do to help us? We fought a war. My father went to World War II. El Hajj Usman Hassanin. World War II, he said he was treated worse than the enemy. But he came back here, accepted Islam, made Hajj, and reconstructed his whole personality, which was so surrounded with the pain he experienced as an African American man here. So as the brother has said, we need to know our history. We need to know the history because the country has some wonderful documents. And this is not the worst place in the world. A lot of places in the world, they claim to be Islamic, but you can't even wear hijab. They're doing as bad or worse, dropping gas on children in the name of Islam. So let's look at the entire thing. The beautiful part about the last couple of weeks, COVID set everybody down. So you could wonder, is your credentials making any difference? Is your ethnicity making any difference? Is anything making any difference? And then the whole world could see the injustice that our people are suffering, just being murdered in the streets. The entire world, which isn't really even being shown right now is in an uproar about the treatment of human beings in this nation, which is all over the world, telling other countries how to act and what to do. Assalamu alaikum, can you hear me? Hello. So we're going now to move to our next speaker, Imam Rafiq Mehdi, and receive some words of wisdom from this beautiful brother and Imam. Assalamu
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته. ما شاء الله تبارك الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه وبعد. Subhanallah, it's an honor to be on the program, and I would join everyone in thanking ICNA Relief and the administration of ICNA Relief and those involved for having such a timely topic and program webinar for the panel and for our viewers. And there's so much I could say about what has been previously said by the other panelists and how do you follow that up. It's just a tremendous honor, and may Allah reward all of them and Sister Tahira for the efforts. Alhamdulillah. I think that what we are experiencing now is indeed an opportunity, and it's a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us as a Muslim community and a Muslim ummah here within the American society, but it also is an opportunity for us to show who we truly are, for us to truly embrace what it means to be an ummati of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and to recognize and embrace the position Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us with by being those whom accept the Quran as the guidance in their lives and the Sunnah of our beloved Prophet Muhammad sallallahu as their role model and as their example. When I think about the seerah, the biography of the Prophet sallallahu and what we are experiencing right now in the United States as far as the protests in the street and the cumulative conscience of many members, many of the society, many American citizens, that they are just not ready to continue to be silent and to accept the systematic, institutionalized racism that has been perpetrated on African Americans for hundreds of years. And they are coming out and speaking out about this and making it known that this has to change. And indeed, as Muslims, we should be at the forefront of this movement, not to, again, take it over, but to be in solidarity with those whom they are fighting oppression, because this is what Islam calls upon us to do. And we are, I think, very proud, and albeit I'm proud of saying that Islam is a total way of life. And we should be, alhamdulillah, in a humble manner, but we should recognize and be proud of the fact that Allah has guided us to a system of belief, a system of life, of building a society, which has put the emphasis on tahmiyat al-nafs, on the protection of the value of the human life, on the protection, the value of human intellect, on the protection, the value of the society, and that the rights of individuals, that all of these things are considered to be the axioms of the goals of the religion. So we are proud to make that statement, but sometimes we relegate Islam to being a collection of rituals and statements and beliefs without institutionalizing the true reality of Islam in our everyday lives. So this is an opportunity for us to recognize that we have to go beyond the masajid, we have to go beyond the institutions that we have built for our communities, and recognize that it's time for us now to take our place in the American diaspora and in the society in which we live. one of the events that transpired in the life of our beloved Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was the hilt al-Futul, and the virtuous pact. And this actually took place in Mecca during the time when Muhammad, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, was a young man. So before the age of Nubuwwah, before the time that he received the first revelation, alayhi salatu wasalam. And just briefly, the events surrounding that particular occurrence was that a Yemeni merchant came to Mecca in order to sell his goods, his wares. And we know that Mecca has been for hundreds of years and a place of trade and commerce. And he came from Yemen and with his goods to sell. And when he arrived in Mecca, he met some of the merchants. He made an agreement and they transferred goods and there was an agreement made. But when time came to make the payment, then the person who had taken possession of his goods refused to pay. And he refused to pay him based upon what? That, okay, you are here, you are out of your country, you are away from your people, you don't have any support, you don't have anyone that's going to stand up for you, then I, by virtue of the power that I am holding under these circumstances, then I can take advantage. I will take your goods, I will refuse to pay. And indeed he did so. But this individual from Yemen, this Yemeni merchant, I mean, he did not hang his head and go back to Yemen and say, well, I guess I'll have to try again next year, just accept that defeat. No, he decided he was going to do what? He decided he was going to protest. Yes, and indeed, he went out in the streets of Mecca and he made it clear. He raised his voice and said that I have been mistreated, I have been oppressed, I have been dealt with unjustly, and that this is not going to stand, that you people are unfair, you are unjust, you are ill mistreating me because I am weak in this position, and I am a minority in this position. And so he protested. Does that ring a bell? Protest? Does that ring a bell going in the street and raising your voice? Does that ring a bell that we are not going to sit silent while this happens? And indeed, he got the attention of the people of Mecca. And of course, not everyone was on his side. Not everyone said, hey, this is right, let's work, let's come to his aid, let's do this, let's do that. Some of them wanted him to be quiet. Some people wanted to silence him. Some people wanted to ignore him. But there was a group of people, and amongst that group of people, mashallah, there was Muhammad ibn Abdullah, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, a young man who was also a merchant. And he recognized that when injustice, when oppression is allowed to take hold and flourish, then the whole society will pay the price, a very negative price for that. So he got together with some like-minded individuals in Mecca, and they stood up to the opposition. They stood up to those who were indifferent. They stood up to those whom they didn't want to rock the boat. They stood up to those who said, look, we are the Arab, we are the Quraysh, we are the strong ones here. Why are we going to submit or going to let ourselves be influenced by this one person's problem? But those people got together and they made a pact. They made a pact, an agreement amongst themselves that we will not let this oppression stand, that we will come together, we will use our influence, we will use our power, our authority, our political prowess, and our place in the society, and we will stand up for this individual. At that point, yes, all lives matter, but at that point, the life of that Yemeni merchant mattered. And we are in a position right now in a time when we have to recognize and stand up and say, Black lives matter. And the Prophet ﷺ and those people with him, he stood up and they made that agreement and they faced the opposition and they got justice for that merchant. And they established a system going forward that when people come to Mecca to trade, that regardless of the that they may be alone, or they may be in a minority, or they may be considered weak and have no support structure, that they will find justice here. And if they do not, we will find it for them. So this is the history that we need to know about as Muslims. And, subhanAllah, the beautiful history that has been related by Sister Tahira, by Imam Khalid, subhanAllah. And as Allah said in the Quran, as Sheikh Ali Sulieman, as he mentioned, that what is the root of this disease? It is jahl, it is ignorance. And if we don't educate ourselves, as the Muslim community, as a nation, as citizens in this nation, to know the history of what has been perpetrated on people of color, on African Americans in the United States for hundreds of years, and then we want to take a stance based on ignorance, then we are always going to be deceived. So this is very important about education and understanding about the reality of the history. So the Prophet, peace be upon him, as I mentioned at that time, was a young man. And years later, after the Nubuwah, after the revelation of the Quran, after the efforts to establish the Muslim community and invite the Tawheed, the oneness of Allah, and to establish the Deen of Islam, and when the Prophet ﷺ was asked and spoke about this particular occasion of that, and he hifd al-fudul, of that virtuous act from those previous years, what did he say? He said in the English meaning, alayhi salatu wasalam, that I would not trade my attendance and my participation in that pact for a herd of red camels. And red camels was one of the most valued possessions for the Arabs in the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It's like somebody saying that I would not trade something for a fleet of Mercedes Benz, and that I would not trade for a whole fleet of the most expensive or the most sought after car that you can imagine. That he said that he would never trade his participation and his attendance to that particular pact. And then he went on to say that if, in the English meaning, that if I was invited to participate in such a pact again in this time, then I would do so. So subhanAllah, I don't know what we can have as an example, more beautiful example of the reality of standing up to oppression and supporting those whom they are oppressed than this action and words of the Prophet. And of course, Sheikh Ali Sulieman and our other speakers, they have mentioned the guidance from the Book of Allah, from the Quran al-Kareem, and mashallah, and from the deen about how we as Muslims, that we have to, and if we shuhada, we have to be witnesses for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we have to, alhamdulillah, establish the deen of Allah, even if it is against our own selves. So subhanAllah, this is not a time for us to be complacent. It is not a time for us to be silent. And indeed, that everyone will have their role to play. But I think that silence or indifference, and in light of what is happening, in light of what we see, and subhanAllah, I was an adolescent at the time of the 1960s. I remember when I graduated from high school, and I'm not going to tell the year. I remember when I graduated from high school, and I was adamant that I am not going to go to the Vietnam War. Why? Because I had an example in front of me of Muhammad Ali, subhanAllah. And I remember when I was intent upon learning something other than what had been fed to me through the public school system, because I understood that we have to educate ourselves, as I learned from examples like Al-Hajj al-Malika and I was adamant that I am going to explore what is available for me as a human being, and not limit myself because of my color or because of what someone has tried to brainwash me into thinking that I cannot achieve. And over the many years that have passed since that time, we have seen, the fall and rise of this discussion, and we have seen this movement ebb and flow, and yet, even after what some of us heralded as a great achievement, the election of our previous president, Barack Obama, that even after that achievement, look where we are today, when a police officer can do without any feeling whatsoever, without any fear of any risk of retaliation, and it's in such a fashion I can't even describe it. Of when you look at that, how nonchalantly he murders another human being without any feeling whatsoever. Why is that? What is the mind frame? What is the disease of the heart that would make a human being reach to that level? That we are seeing now that this movement that is, mashallah, that is growing in strength and growing in its composure, that it is affecting people from all walks of life. That has a different feeling of some of the things that I've experienced in the past. And I think that as Muslims, as ummatis of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and as mashallah, as Imam Khalid so eloquently put it, if we don't bring all of the resources that we have by the grace and mercy of Allah established in this country over the last 50 years, if we don't bring these to bear in order to be part of this solution, be part of this movement, be part of changing this culture and dismantling this system that has been built upon oppression, upon racism, upon extorting another group of people because of their color and because of just we have the ways and means to do so, then certainly we are going to be accountable in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or Yom Al-Qiyamah. But I think even before that, are we not accountable every day? Are we not accountable when we look at our spouses, at our children, when we go to our place of work, when we deal with students, with colleagues, with patients, and mashallah, with co-workers? Are we not accountable when we go to sleep at night that we don't know if Allah is going to give our soul back? So we have to accept and embrace who we are, and we have to, mashallah, make our decisions and make our next steps based upon the fact that it is part and parcel of our faith, part and parcel of our religion, that we establish that which is correct, that we establish that which is based upon justice, that which is based upon righteousness, that which is based upon relieving or removing oppression from every individual. Because this is the only way that a human being can become free. If the oppression of the mind and the heart is removed from them, and that oppression does not just take the form of the one who is being oppressed, but the one who is oppressing is oppressed even more. Because if they are doing it willfully, then that means they are disconnected from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if they are doing it in ignorance, it means that those who know have to come forward and light for them a way. So this is what we are tasked to do, and it begins with discussions like this. So again, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be with us and help us and protect us, every one of us, and all of our endeavors. And so much thanks goes to our commentators, Tahira, and our panelists, and all of those of you who have joined this discussion. And we hope that it will be a catalyst moving forward, that we as a Muslim community truly do become part of this movement, that we pray to Allah in removing some of the barriers that have kept us from coming together in our communities as human beings to achieve something positive. I mean,
Jazakumullah khair. Imam Rafiq. Inshallah, I'll invite the rest of the speakers for the open panel now.
Assalamu alaikum. So
Well,
sorry about the technical difficulties. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We
Yes.
want to thank
Yeah.
everyone. It's so beautiful. It's so inspiring. And inspire means to breathe life into a reality. We have several questions. We want to be good with our time. We wanted to present some questions to you, and you can take your time. Whoever wants to answer, it would be of value to people who don't understand the entirety. You covered a great deal of them in your personal lectures, but would one of you talk about how the effect of incarceration as I understand, I've worked in the system, we have more people, Black men especially, and now they're locking up our women. We have more people incarcerated in America right now than they had in South Africa at the height of the apartheid. What does this do? It affects our families. It keeps us in a state of trauma, post-traumatic trauma. And then the way they've done it, I ask everybody to read the book, The New Jim Crow by Michelle Alexander. Even when the brothers and sisters get out of prison, they make sure they can't find housing, they can't find jobs. There's a constant rebuilding of the structure. It's not an isolated, it's a floating injustice that is constantly being refined and strengthened. So could someone talk about the impact that this kind of trauma, incarceration, we even have a question about the prison to school to pipeline. They're even preparing our children as early as the 4th grade to be in prison. And what I understand, many of the prisons are now using the prisoners to make items that they can make money off. It's all about a financial return. Would someone want to address some of those dynamics?
Inshallah, I'll take a stab at it.
Okay.
You know, the statistics that you cited, although accurate, it can never really convey the generational damage that the incarceration of Black men in particular has done to the just African American community in general. I mean, it is something, and Michelle Alexander and so many other authors have pointed out how it's all because of a loophole. Not all because, but a loophole in the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution provides the implementation and execution of slavery for those people who have committed a crime. 13th Amendment says that the abolition of slavery, you know, you can't do it in the states except for those who've been convicted of criminal offenses. And so this government has taken full advantage of that clause in the 13th Amendment. And as you said, prison industries, you know, at one point there was this big issue about the United States sending so many jobs overseas. Well, many of these companies realize that it's much cheaper for them to insource rather than to outsource, put it into the prisons. So you have inmates, people incarcerated, who, because of prison industries, they're making Victoria's Secret's lingerie. They're doing all kinds of things. When I was growing up in North Carolina, about the only thing they had inmates doing, to my knowledge, other than working on these prison farms, were making license plates. And so we used to joke about, yeah, you're going to end up, you know, you're going to get a career, all right, you're going to be making license plates for the rest of your life. And it was a joke to us as kids. But coming of age and realizing how far prison industries had, what they had evolved to or devolved to, and how this system was just another form of slavery. I mean, they were forced labor, and then, you know, not to even mention the things about the private prisons and how incarceration has become something that is a profit-making industry, and the kinds of abuse that people incarcerated suffer in these private prisons, because they don't have to meet the same standards as these already substandard, dehumanizing state and federal prisons. So in private, they can get money from the government and almost do whatever they want to do. So it's a horrendous system. And I'll just say one other quick thing. For a number of years, I worked in the public school system in North Carolina, and I directed the program for young people who have been put out of their regular schools, their school assignments. It started in high school, then we developed something for middle school, but they had been put out of their schools, and it was put under the heading of a dropout prevention program. But we're working with these young people directly and trying to see what can we do to impact them beyond what the books are telling us. You know, I began to try to direct our staff. Let's work on this as so many different things, but let's work on this idea that so many of these young people have, that it's a badge of honor that they can go back to their communities after they've been locked up, and their street cred goes up because they've been in jail. And you know, and I'd heard this, but when I started working with these kids, young people directly, I realized that this was a fact. So it's a self-sustaining generational hazard that happens with people that get caught up in the system, and the impact it has on the families.
SubhanAllah, that's beautiful. And what I really respect about Sheikh Ali, Sulieman Ali, all you brothers, you're more than just talking. Sister Malika, she's out on the battlefield providing homes. Many of these people are homeless, our poor brothers and sisters. And Michelle was saying in her books, Michelle Alexander has now left law. She was so upset about what she saw. And she said she was married to a federal prosecutor. He couldn't even see it. She's left law, and she's in a theological seminary. Just literally lost her mind. But what she found out was that once you get out of prison and you can't find a place to stay, they've rewritten the law. So if your mother's in Section 8, she loses her Section 8. Is that true, Malika? So here you punish the innocent. So what power is it in that we have Muslim family services that build transitional housing? We have Sister Malika, and I know there are things going on in your community, Sheikh, and yours, Brother Rafiq. We have to do more than talk. We have to build. And so what would you all say about building the healing for the people caught up in this traps? It's one thing to say, I understand, but if you have nowhere to go to eat, I was in the prison system providing therapy for women who were pregnant. I actually went with them to the hospital because now the judges lock a mom up, even if she's pregnant. They send her right to prison. They'll send me in to have her help the baby, and then I would help get a home for the child. If she was in there for, say, life or 14. What kind of baby? What is that baby going to have when it was snatched off its mother's breast? And I actually cried. I would be in a room with the police officers. We'd sit there and cry while they took that baby out of her arms. So we have to do more than just talk about it and say how pitiful it is. So does anybody have any solutions about what we could do to help address what we know is wrong?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. That was going to be one of my questions. Mashallah, the sheikhs and the brothers have really shared a lot of knowledge and history, stories from, the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam and the Sahaba, and how can we bring those stories to light today, to make them relevant to our young people today. When I'm listening to the school to prison pipeline and, some of the topics that you're bringing up, I worked at a public high school in Jamaica, New York. I ran an after school program there, and the school was set up as a prison. These young people in the morning would have to come in, get in line to go through the metal detectors, take off their shoes, take off their belts, just to get into school.
Right.
And then after school, they would have the horses that were stationed on the sidewalk to bump the kids down the street to get them off the school property. This is where our young people are today. So we need to be able to give them tools, but also make the lessons that we have as, some of the elders in the community of these beautiful lessons of Islam. How do we make them relevant today for our young people so they can hold tight to that in the work that they are doing?
SubhanAllah, that's beautiful, sis. I didn't know about the horses. I do know one thing before you all go. We have to be kind. I know that Muslims can be a little remote. We have to see how oppression takes effect. So maybe the young lady is not dressed the way we think we should still hug her and love her. The little brother may have his pants falling down and his hat turned around. But the brothers need to go out there and embrace that boy, put their arms, because we at some point can't do it. I was in the store one day. My boys were like 10 years old, and a little group of their friends walked up and said, "Miss Tahira, can you hug us like you hug the twins?" I would hug the kids when they came home. Those kids would watch me hug my children. And do you know those kids lined up for me to hug them? Two of them are dead. One of them is in prison. So I thank Allah Ta'ala. I was in the store at that time, but it means our kids are crying out. Our children are crying out for love, acceptance, and we can get on a high horse and look down on people. I mean, let's talk about some things that we could do to make it easier for people to think about Islam. I had someone tell me, I was so frightened when you became my supervisor. I heard you were Muslim, because the Muslims that have been in my family have been so condemning to us. So not saying that haram things are going to be halal, but being able to reach out and understand. I don't understand what's created this human being to be standing here looking like this or acting like this. Anybody have any suggestions of what do we do to make the walk easier within our own personal abilities?
Well, exactly, because these conversations are wonderful. But
Yeah.
where do we go from here?
Yes. Sheikh Ali, got a smile?
Because the question, it looks like easy, but it's not simple.
Yeah.
Okay, Malika, she said how we can make this beautiful knowledge relevant to
Yes.
our young men. Someone can simply say through education, but it depends on who teach.
That's right.
It depends on someone like Imam Khalid who understands the situation very well. He can make it relevant.
Yes.
He can connect. Well, I can make this kind of knowledge relevant to our young men's understanding.
Yes.
Everything is based on knowledge in Islam. Is that right?
Yes.
Knowledge is the source of power. So to teach this, to make it relevant, it depends on the teacher.
Yes.
If the teacher understands the situation very well, he will know how to make it relevant, because we have a book which is relevant for all ages.
Yes.
This is not an claim, but how to make it, how to make it relevant to the people.
Yes.
That's the main thing. So I would say through education, but education also we need a good teacher.
Yes.
A good teacher.
Yeah, exactly. I think education is definitely the key, but education needs to not only for the young people, but their parents as well. But I think we need to look at. We were created a nation. I'm sorry.
To the death, is that right? We continue to learn until we die.
From the cradle to the grave.
That's right. Imam Mehdi, you were going to say something? I mean, Imam Griggs, you have your hand up.
Yeah. You know, I'm sitting there. I was trying to remember the person who.
I can't hear Imam Griggs. I can't hear him.
Okay. I was trying to remember who quote this was attributed to. I don't know if it was Frederick Douglass, but someone made the quote, and I can't even remember the exact quote, but about how much easier it is to build a child, a whole child, than to repair a broken man.
Yes, right.
So the earlier intervention that we do with our young people, the more likelihood, if it's effective interventions, the greater the likelihood that we're going to get the results that we're seeking. And it's not to say that you write someone off once they get to high school or get older than that, but the earlier the intervention, whatever that intervention is, whether it's, let me give a quick example. At one point in my life, I had a job. I was recruited to direct this nonprofit agency. And it was during the 1990s, and it was at a time when street drug sales and had grandmamas hiding and sleeping in bathtubs at night because of the shooting in their neighborhoods and this kind of thing. So they were looking around for somebody they thought crazy enough to try to get up in the middle of it. And they said, "Well, Griggs is crazy. Let's get him and bring him here." But the guidelines for the program. What the board that hired me wanted me to do was to create a mechanism to make sure that these kids who committed crimes, caught for drugs or shooting or something like that, that they actually got the maximum sentence and that they didn't get off and we didn't treat them like babies and this kind of thing. And I did this for about a week and I said, what in the heck? You know, this makes no sense. And so by the grace of Allah, we were able to create off budget a program called Juneteenth, an odd job employment program for children 13 to 18.
Yes.
I can't hear Imam Khalid.
Can you hear me? Okay. And so we created this odd job employment program, and a lot of buy-in. It was no budget for it. What the program was designed to do was to punish children who had gotten caught up in behavior that they were getting a police record. I conscious I couldn't do it. That my heart let me do that. And so that and other experiences, and even what we try to do in our mosque in Winston-Salem, is create programs and opportunities, just as you said about these young kids wanting you to hug them. They are so emotionally needy, not fault of their own, but circumstances that they have to live under. And so we have to give of our time. We have to, and I'm talking about Muslims, you know, this is not just a job for people who are living in certain circumstances themselves. I think as Muslims, we have to get out of our comfort zones or find those who are comfortable in working with a lot of these kids, because you know, in the African American community, you know, I'm an organization person, and so when we were doing something and trying to work with these kids, and I said, and really I knew it by books, but just working more directly with them and see the absence of positive male role models. So I come one day and I say, oh, wow, what can we do? Oh, let's create the Alliance of African American Men. Let's go out here and get some of these African American brothers who are not necessarily community activists. These are just good, solid citizens who will lend their time to mentoring, working with, you know, spending their money and helping these young kids. And we, you know, over the years, you know, I've seen the results of some of these efforts. Some of them went to prison. Some of them went to prison for a long time. But I would dare say that I have felt that those kinds of initiatives, as early as intervention as we can, will bear fruit. We can't jump in the middle of Chicago and think that we're going to solve overnight the problem of all of the black boys shooting at each other and stuff. It didn't get like that overnight. So we got to maybe, I'm not saying sacrifice a generation, but we have to at least try
do what we can. Do what we can.
Work on those younger ones before they get to that point of those kinds of involvement. You know, but
that's one thing I really appreciate about ICNA Relief. You know, ICNA Relief is going into
address the issue.
We're meeting people where they're at, and we're assisting in communities to address some of the systematic issues that are happening in our low-income communities. So, you know, we were created a nation and tribes to know one another, and we really invite people to come along with us. You know, join hands with ICNA Relief, volunteer of your time, your service, your money, and
send your ideas. Send your ideas. We've got to stop. They're on me for this drop the mic thing. The thing I can say, and we can stay for forever. Can the Imam, Griggs, and Imam Mehdi and Sheikh Ali, somehow we can quantify our efforts and know what Malika is doing. Sheikh Ali, Muslim Family Service, we're feeding people. You can't hear anything if you're hungry. Providing food, but we need to quantify some things that some people may be able to do and some people won't. May Allah bless you all, give you the highest your family highest room in Firdaus for the efforts. Subhanallah. They want the young poets and writers to come in. Can we listen to them for a minute? And then we'll have a dua and close out. I'm sorry to be rushed. I could sit here forever. This is my life. This is my paradise, to hear my righteous brothers and sisters helping address the stress and the test that Allah has prescribed for each of us. This was prescribed for us at this time, for us to come up with an idea to solve it. And all the babies are ours. I cease to look at my four as my only children. All these children are mine, alhamdulillah, that I have to answer for. So we're going to do the, I don't know if Sister Mariama Bajdi is available. She wants to, she's a writer and a poet. Can you share something with us to lift our spirits, sweetheart?
Assalamualaikum, Sister Tahira. How are you doing?
Walaikum salam, baby. That beautiful, beautiful countenance that Allah gave you.
Alhamdulillah, I'm very happy to be here. So before I start, I just wanted to express my appreciation for you and all of the amazing speakers and scholars who took the time out to educate us today. So I refer to myself as a first-generation African-American because my parents emigrated here from West Africa and I was born here. So I've lived both the immigrant life at home, but also an African-American life. And so Juneteenth is a very reflective day for me because these weren't my direct ancestors who were emancipated, but sometimes I think that maybe a lot of them were my biological ancestors because my parents came from the Gambia, which is a nation where many enslaved folks were taken from. Kunta Kinte from roots is from the Gambia. But either way, they are my spiritual ancestors because my experiences as a Black person in America today are the direct result of the centuries of striving and struggle for liberation of Black Americans. That is to say, I philosophize on my Blacklist a lot, and it's the topic of a lot of my writing. So I've got 2 poems to share today. And I'm really bad at titles, so none of them have titles, but Bismillah. Is it wrong of me to feel like they're coming for me? Like it's only a matter of time before I'm next? What a powerful position you must hold to commit an act of resistance by simply existing. They've made it a crime to be this Black, bold, beautiful, and all officers have standing orders to confiscate your radiance, and they will try, oh, they will try. But it is impossible to separate a current from a wave or a wave from a current. You see, what they're really doing is just setting fire to ash, because when you burn ash, you're still left with just ash. It's the same thing you started with. That is to say their efforts are futile. That is to say they try to destroy us to find that nothing has changed. That is not to say that we are merely ashes, but that we are the phoenix that arises from that which they tried to destroy us through. And is that not Black culture? Is that not resilience? Is that not stand your ground? This ground has been nourished on my blood for so long. It has become an acquired taste. When no one else will take us, this ground always has open arms to take us in, help us bloom where we were planted. You know, I never understood that phrase, bloom where you're planted, how that's an inspirational phrase, but I get it now. To bloom where you're planted is, they tried to bury us, but they did not know that we were seeds. To bloom where you're planted is to be the weeds that kill southern trees that bear strange fruit. To bloom where you're planted is to be the flower that gives its fragrance even to the hand that crushes you. And it crushes you. Understand that this hurts. This is the kind of hurting that don't take a break, because the war on our being don't take a break. You look in your brother's face and you remember why you can't take a break, because the hurting won't stop until we make them stop hurting us. It seems like all I can write about these days is the politics of staying alive. It feels like treason not to, and how can I not when my body is a house on fire that nobody believes is worth saving? When I'm fighting just to exist every day. When merely existing is an act of resistance, then where is the time for anything else? And the second poem was inspired by all of the phony arrests, all of the stop and frisk, all of the innocent Black people who wind up arrested, and you hear that they were arrested for resisting arrest. That makes no sense to me, but that's where this came from. Can someone explain to me how you can be arrested for resisting arrest? I ask. When you're not white, anything is possible, she says. Overachievers, a lot of us. Reach for the stars, you might wind up 6 feet under for thinking too highly of yourself, for thinking you're worth something, for thinking you're worth the good life, for not restricting yourself to the cage they've been trying to stick you in for centuries now, but you pesky Negroes won't let yourself stay trapped. Always gotta go around thinking you deserve better. Always gotta go around believing you're worth more than what they teach you in school. That's dangerous, you know. A Negro with confidence, with integrity, with a high sense of self-esteem. Who does she think she is, acting like the right way is not the right way? Can someone explain to me how you can be arrested for resisting arrest? Because our existence is an act of resistance. To go about your day believing your skin is not a crime, that is a crime. To believe that you are worthy of humanity and respect, that is a crime. To believe that you are worthy of, to believe that you deserve an education that is not surrounded by barbed wire, a school with public safety instead of real police. To believe that you deserve detention instead of a headlock and a smackdown in the principal's office, that is a crime. This is your resistance to a life lived constantly under arrest. To believe that you are worth something in this world was your first mistake and your biggest crime, punishable by death in court of officers' trigger finger, and the grand jury will say, yeah, he did it. But where in the law did it say he was wrong, though? And the news will say, yeah, he did it. But our sources tell us the victim got detention once, got in trouble by his mama once when he was a kid. The evidence is there. He's a bad apple. The evidence is there. The officer killed him, but he was a bad apple. The activists will say enough is enough. The dark people will say nowhere outside our doors is safe. But we will go out anyway. We will not fear. Not fearing is a crime. His mama will say he didn't do nothing, and she's right. But that don't mean her boy wasn't black, or that he wasn't killed by a badge atop a blue shirt, atop a white skin that turns blue when it can't breathe. And the street will say, I am choking on all of this blood, but I still try to make myself soft for the black boy who dared to live as he falls. But nobody is listening anymore. That is my time.
Beautiful. Oh, alhamdulillah. May Allah continue to inspire you, baby. We need you. We need you. Allahu alam, baby. And I hope you can get published one day. Inshallah. Bless you, Angel. Bless you, Angel. And our next presenter is Ali Dean. He's a poet and author.
I'm about to start.
All right.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm sorry for let me take this off. I'm sorry for the weird background. I am currently at a protest/rally at Barclays Center, and as you can hear in the background, I was supposed to perform for this webinar, but we have a live audience, so I'll be doing it at the same time. Again, setup is kind of weird, so I'm gonna try to do this quickly and we can continue with the event, inshallah. So the title of this poem is I Am Sorry. I am sorry. I apologize that I am who I am. I am sorry I was born with a problem that most of the world is afraid of. I'm sorry I have this disease. Because of this sickness, people cross the street when they see me despite the smile on their face. Or what did I speak of? I'm apologizing for being black. I'm sorry I have a bad case of the melanin. I'm sorry I didn't get up first and realize that you didn't want to sit next to black people on a train. I'm sorry I don't walk through the store with my hands up so you won't have to bother and check if I'm stealing or not. I'm sorry for being born this way. I'm sorry my skin color doesn't provide the class clowns enough comedy material to use. I'm sorry all those events still have an impact on my personality. I guess it makes sense. I've had the same skin after all these years. I'm sorry to the police officers that I am not bulletproof. I'm sorry that I failed to realize that when y'all telling us to put our hands up, y'all just want us to exercise. I'm sorry that when you tell me to put my hands behind my back, you're only encouraging me to be more flexible. I'm sorry that when you smash my face against the pavement and beat me up on the street, I don't take the time to appreciate the rose growing out of the concrete. I'm so sorry that when I woke up, I wore my criminal face. Check my wardrobe, that's the only face that I had. I'm sorry that my wallet suddenly transforms into a gun once you notice my skin color is half past dark. Call me a magician, call me a monster, because I single-handedly, unarmed, strike fear into the hearts of America's finest. I'm sorry I can't take my life back after you snatch it away from me. Like you snatched it away from George Floyd, from Breonna Taylor, from Amadou Diallo. I'm sorry Emmett Till's mother didn't back down like y'all expected her to. I'm sorry Black women have the ability to turn nothing into everything. I'm sorry they have this ability to pound pain into beauty like an African dish. I'm so sorry that a Black woman gave birth to me. I'm so sorry that we have so much greatness in us, that they had to set up institutions just to ensure that we don't prosper, yet still look around. I'm sorry, we can't help it. When I get cut, I bleed excellence, so stab me at your own risk. Cover a hole and I will dig two more. I'm sorry that the darkest part of my body is the brightest part of my future. So that means one thing, I'm gonna shine one day. And I'm sorry, because when I do, it'll be so bright, you might just miss it. Thank you very much.
Allah bless you, sweetheart. Oh, that's amazing. You have a great future ahead of you. Oh, subhanallah. Subhanallah. May Allah bless you and reward you, sweetheart. And our final presenter is Ibrahim Jaffer. He's a basketball star and poet. Subhanallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
How we doing?
Subhanallah.
I'm trying to get this camera right. Alhamdulillah, it is a pleasure for me to be here.
Subhanallah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala Rasulillahi Kareem wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. As was said, my name is Ibrahim Jabir. I'm a third generation American-born Muslim. And my grandfather, Hisham Jabir, he's known for performing the Janazah prayer for Malcolm X. If you've ever seen the pictures of Malcolm's Janazah, that's my grandfather standing over him praying with another person to his left side, which is actually the wrong side. But he just came up and my grandfather didn't know who he was. I made that introduction because the first poem that I wanted to share is called I Buried Malcolm, and it's about a book that my grandfather wrote that I learned a lot from. We honor the life of Malcolm. At least that's what we say. But would we really be with Malcolm if he was here with us today? One day the phone rang in a Jersey apartment and it shuttered the walls. Such was the trembling voice on the other end of the call. See, some people are like mountains, and well, Malcolm was tall, but how many bullets does it take for a martyr to fall? Haj Malik is dead, assassinated, he bled. 7 shots is what the journalist said. I heard the call from the mouth of a man who witnessed it all. The mysterious ring at the end of the hall, threats on the life of anyone getting involved. Haj Hisham Jabir, you are risking it all. His wife at his side in a hurry said, if they put their hands on you, then send them to the cemetery. It's scary, but my grandfather showed no signs of worry. It's time to bury our brother whose final rites we carry. Over 50 years ago, my grandfather stood over the body of Haj Malik, Malcolm X, and he prayed, and then he escorted the martyr to his grave. Over 50 years ago, the tears flowed for days like waves in the land of the free, the home of the slave. But there was no march, there was no parade, there was no celebration for the sacrifice that he made, trying to buy righteousness at a stifling wage, and life was the price that he paid. Remember the martyr, Remember the minister, remember the father, remember the soldier, remember the scholar, remember the Muslim. That man that you honor was more than just the color of his skin and the texture of his hair. He was more than that history that stripped us bare. He was more than that nationalist with his black fist in the air. He was honest, he was just, he was fair, a breath of fresh air, a brother so rare, the undying hope in a moment of despair. And over 50 years later, we're still waiting for the smoke to clear. They pulled back triggers to take away your light, but over 50 years later, you still shine bright, dear Malcolm. We applaud you for the courage that spilled out from your heart. We applaud you for the faith that ran through your veins, voice of the fearless spirit of change. 50 years and we're still hearing your name. I wish I was here when you came to stand at your side when that weapon was aimed. Now look at your people, they embody your pain, still struggling hard to shatter the chains. I wish I was here when your body was claimed. I wish I was there when they gathered to pray, with Haj Hisham Jabber leading the way. But if I was there with you then I might not be here today, reminding the people never to stray, stand firm for the truth and never ever sway. If you live as a coward, then you die the same way. We don't celebrate your life with the words that we say, but with the life that we lead and the price that we pay. We honor the life of Malcolm. At least that's what we say. But would we really be with Malcolm if he was here with us today? First poem. MashaAllah, tabarakallah. The next poem, because I have a short amount of time, is entitled, What's the Difference? It's old. All of this content is old, but it remains relevant because the beast continues to show his face and his horns every once in a while, or way too often, rather. What's the difference between Baltimore and Baghdad, Ferguson and Philistine, crooked cops and corrupt regimes? What's the difference between Trayvon and Tajuddin, Eric Gardner and Ibrahim, Tamir Rice and Abdul Rahim? Same story, different scene. Same struggle, different theme. The only thing that seems to change is the color scheme. Same slogan, by any means, from urban America to the Arab Springs. They're killing dreams. The currency may be different and the color of the money, but there's a population in every nation with nothing in their tummy. You can live in the West and still go to sleep hungry. And some places in the US look like third world countries. So what's the difference? The religion you practice, the language you speak, the complexion of your skin, the way that you think. The strong in every society tends to prey on the weak. And I just happen to be in a place where the two places meet, caught up in the cross between the West and the East because of my race, because of my beliefs, because there is no difference between psycho soldiers and crazy police. They don't need a reason to hate you. It's the nature of the beast. If they profit from war, why would they want to make peace? Crime is money. They don't want it to cease. There's a war on the streets and a war overseas. Corruption, destruction, extortion, and greed. Of course, there'll be corpses and mothers that grieve. Some will be captured and others will bleed. Some were forced to come. Some were forced to leave. That's the difference between the slaves and the refugees. Same story, different lead. Same struggle, different creed. Same slogan, I can't breathe, from Tallahassee to Tel Aviv. The only difference between them is the distance between them. They're still whipped by the system and stripped of their freedoms. Oppression doesn't rest in any particular region. Anywhere you go, you are destined to meet them, whether you rest in the republics or reside in the kingdoms. From Egypt to the Emirates to the immigrants in England, Michigan to Morocco, Kashmir to Cleveland. What nation can go to sleep without its citizens bleeding? Civilians are screaming from Syria to Sweden, victims to these systems that censor our freedoms, and any act of resistance against it, consider it treason. I am the oppressed of the East and the West in the flesh, the Black Patrick Henry with Arabic on my breath, saying, give me justice or give me death, even if this be my last request, because a man is not a man if he should ask for less, what's the difference? Have I run out of time?
Asking us to
My
go.
sister at?
Oh my goodness. You are beautiful. May Allah bless you and your family, your grandfather, everyone. And we stay connected with us, dear. You all get this published, get this out for our kids, for all of us to hear. For all of us
It's
here. May
out
Allah bless
there.
you. Which of our favorites, Allah says, which of my favorites would you deny? You're one of the favorites. All of us are the favorites. We have to get out of here. I just got a time. What the Imam, Griggs, please lead us in the final dua.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bird of hardship and oppression, of evil judgment of the enemies of truth and justice. O Allah, strengthen our resolve to stand for justice. Remove any cowardice in our hearts that keeps us from standing up for your cause. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Inna al-insana lafi illa alladhina amanu wa amilu as-salihat wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis-sabr. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.
Assalamu alaikum. We wish the best upon the heads of everyone, of the souls and the hearts that were here today. Let us continue to pray and thank Allah Ta'ala that He has made us among the people who are attempting to be the righteous. May we come back again. We will continue to build. May we keep our faces pointed toward our Lord. When we keep Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam as our example. Subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah bless you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi barakatuhu.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.